All right, so with that, let's move into our best movies of the year. And this is going to be a lot more fun because like we're going to be, I mean, it's fun to roast movies, but it's also fun to just praise movies because we got a handful of incredible movies. Like even if you gave like my top 40 movies of this year, I would still say like, oh, great. So kick me off. What's your number 10?
So running through my 10 through 6. Yeah, this is going to be tough, especially given that, like, I will admit this list is not still solidified. There were a couple of other movies that I wanted to watch / rewatch as finished. But as of right now,
I've watched a lot, but like I'm moving mine around. Is what
exactly. Mine are constantly shifting around. There are a couple other ones that I'm considering putting in here as well. But as of right now, my number 10, Godzilla -1. Saw this a couple of weeks ago. One of the biggest surprises of the year for sure. Just really, really engaged me. Really, again, like brought back like what Godzilla is supposed to be, right? And also mixing it in with like this beautiful story of like, you know, sacrifice and what it is to like, you know, be a part of something greater than yourself and to like, you know, get over the trauma of your past. It was really, really good. Was not expecting to find any of those things in a Godzilla movie. And also, again, continuing to show that Japan does not mess around when it comes to cinema. My number 9, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I loved every single minute of this movie. I had a really good blast. It was so heartfelt and like so emotional, like getting to actually say goodbye to these characters, you know, especially given that like the whole aura of Marvel had kind of like, you know, gone the way of the dodo. But I was going in, obviously I had my worries about this, but I kind of had a feeling in my heart of hearts that James Gunn was going to wrap this up the right way. And he did, and he nailed it as far as
he really did. Yeah.
Again, some of the saddest and some of the darkest Marvel moments that I've ever seen, but like I said, it was all in service to this greater overall story. So again, really, really great. Number 8, Across the Spider-Verse. One of the, forget the whole Spider-Man of it all, one of the most engaging and brilliantly made animated movies that I've seen. I'm always a big defender of animated movies. I try to put one in my top 10 every year when they actually, when they actually have one that's worth putting in there. And this was it for me. You know, I saw a lot of other great animated movies this year. The animated Ninja Turtles and Boy and the Heron being up there. I also still want to watch Your Name, which is the other Japanese movie that came out this year. But Across the Spider-Verse,
I think you mean Suzume, right?
Suzume, that's the one.
Your Name was 2017.
Your Name was 2017. That's the one I'm talking about. That's what I meant. But yeah, no, what's it called? Across the Spider-Verse, I really, really enjoyed this one. The cliffhanger aside, like there was just so much that this movie introduced in terms of multiversal storytelling, in terms of animated storytelling,
just new voiceover visually visceral movie.
Yes, visually one of the most impressive movies of the year. I really, really enjoyed this one. My number 7 is The Iron Claw, which is again the A24 film directed by Sean Durkin about the Von Erich wrestling family, and talk about a movie that is one part biopic and one part one of the saddest, like, I hate comparing everything to Final Destination, but like that's the only basis that I have for movies to progressively kill off its characters one by one by the end. But like, and even that feels like insulting because Final Destination is usually done for like comedic purposes, and this is the total opposite of that. This is one of the saddest, most tragic real-to-life stories that I've ever seen, where you have this family of wrestlers, all of whom are brothers, that all progressively died out, except for the one played by Zac Efron, who gives arguably the performance of his career in this movie. This is the most different, this is the most diverse, this is the most emotionally raw and vulnerable performance he's ever given. Yeah, my hat's off to this too, and to Sean Durkin as well, who's come a long way from directing Martha, Marcy May, Marlene. And then my number 6, a movie that I saw at New York Film Festival, did not like, and then rewatched when it hit Netflix, and I'm like, no, this movie is straight up Hitchcockian by nature. That's May December from Todd Haynes, which is just, oh my God, like just creeping up my skin.
I love this movie
to a T. Some of the best performances of the year, some of the most intriguing and crazy subject matter of the year. Oh man, I absolutely loved my time with this one for sure. I hope this movie wins several Oscars and is nominated for a lot of Oscars and wins several Oscars, particularly for Charles Melton, who gives like the breakout performance.
He was amazing, dude. We could talk about him for a while.
Absolutely,
so
yeah. So that's my 10 through 6.
Some good ones there. Couple that I really like. I didn't see Godzilla yet. Couple that I really like. A couple that missed my list just barely, but let's get into it. So my number 10, there's always a couple great franchise films of the year. I decided to put one franchise film on my list in order to kick it off. And if I was going to put one, it had to be Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. This was my most anticipated movie of the year, but also it just like, it gave me everything I wanted. And you could like argue whether or not this was better than Fallout, but that's not the point. There's every sort of moment of action in this movie is so perfected and it's thrilling. The story is like complex in a very inviting way. And the cast is really great. It's thrilling. It sort of like goes to the darker ends that Fallout was implying. And that whole last 45 minutes on the train and the motorbike jump that's so famous now, I could rewatch it, and I have rewatched it, but I could rewatch it forever. Number 9 is a little movie that you mentioned called The Iron Claw. Just really powerful, and I wasn't expecting it to make my list, but it absolutely did, thanks to it being the only movie that made me cry this year. Being an older brother and watching that film, and Zac Efron, Holt McCallany, Harris Dickinson, everyone being so terrific. Number 8, Saltburn. Emerald Fennell is such a good director. Like, this is the second time that one of her movies has made my my list. And you know how many movies she's made? 2. So she's just off to a brilliant start. And this movie just feels so new and so out there in a way that that not a lot of movies are. And it's one that you could revisit for its cinematography, for its acting, for its dynamics, for its twists, for its thrills, for its production design. And I just enjoyed the experience of watching it so much, and would recommend it to anyone who loves these kind of films. Number 7 is Anatomy of a Fall. And even just saying it at number 7, it feels so low, but it's such an incredibly written movie that sort of takes like a murder trial where the whole movie is asking, did this wife kill her husband? And then an hour and a half into the movie, it stops being the point. And the point is this ugly marriage that reveals layers about its characters. And the movie asks you whether or not you want to judge this character for yourself. Have you seen it, by the way?
I have seen Anatomy of a Fall. Yes, it was very, very high up in my honorable mentions. It unfortunately got beat out by a couple different entries that I had above it.
Fair enough. Number 6 is actually a movie that I had the pleasure of talking with you about, and that is The Holdovers.
Yes.
Just one of the year's defining movies, I think. And Paul Giamatti's best work ever, Alexander Payne's best work ever, Dominic Sessa being a breakout, Davine Joy Randolph arguably deserving an Oscar win. The whole 70s style directing and editing, matching up with this savage, cynical humor, but this optimistic message about human flaws and human connection. I rewatched it with my parents when it came out on digital, and I just think if you're gonna watch one movie that's like a feel-good movie this year, then it should be this one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not going to be too much of a difference because that's in my next couple of choices. But like I said, my 5 through 2 is probably the most difficult top 5 that I've ever had to come up with for any list ever. And so I'm just going to burn through them. And like I said, it's not necessarily going to potentially be the same. I don't know if this is going to be my definitive. I'm still moving some choices around. As of right now, Killers of the Flower Moon is not in my top 10. It could be there again. Same with Poor Things. Poor Things could make its way back in there as well. But as of right now, my number 5, Saltburn.
Some spoilers.
Yeah, my number 5. Yeah, my number 5, Saltburn. Yeah, again, one that following up Promising Young Woman. I'm like, how is Emerald Fennell going to deliver? You got Barry Keoghan, you got Jacob Elordi, you got elements of talented Mr. Ripley. How are you going to follow this up? And man, like I said, I don't think that what I'll say is I don't think she pulls off the twist as well here as she did in Promising Young Woman. But for my money, just everything that I could have wanted. Just this movie is sleek. This movie is twisted. This movie is messed up. This movie is conniving. It's everything that I want from a manipulative thriller. Barry Keoghan is a tactical, brilliant mastermind, and I just love him for this movie. Yeah. I think he is really what holds this movie together. Ultimately, my number 4, The Holdovers, which, like I said, you and I already talked about to death. This is the feel-good movie of the year, which kind of goes in stark contrast to kind of the curmudgeony exterior that it has, but underneath you have a heart of gold story about outsiders who kind of have nowhere else to go, all kind of respectively bonding in this one isolated location. Like I said, Paul Giamatti, Dominic Sessa, and Divine Joy Randolph all give 3 of the best performances of the year, and I cannot wait to see where they go awards caliber wise. My number 3 is one that I've seen on a few people's top 10 lists, but not a lot, and that is the Netflix original Fair Play, which won out at Sundance. That Netflix bought features 2 of the best performances of the year from Alden Ehrenreich and Phoebe Dynevor, and basically features the pure dictionary definition of what happens when modern capitalism basically destroys what is otherwise great relationships. It deals with toxic masculinity and feelings of inferiority mixed with the idea of, women in the workplace, the reasons for why they are there. And I think it handles both things brilliantly from either side. Chloe DeMont should absolutely be patting herself on the back for what she pulled off here. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed this one. It had a lot of elements of one of my favorite TV shows that I've got right now. now industry. Basically, this is basically the American version of the irony.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one with Myha'la.
Yes,
right?
that was is incredible, and I cannot wait for the third season when that comes back this year. So yeah, fair play. My number 3, and then my number 2. Again, this is probably a lot higher than most people have. This Maestro, Bradley Cooper's Leonard Bernstein biopic, is a movie that, again, I heard from everybody going in. This is Bradley Cooper's giving an Oscar movie. This is going to be, Oscar bait. It's not going to have anything like really intriguing, and I have to say, man, I fell in love with this movie. My only major problem is with the ending. I think kind of the way that they treat the ending, specifically after the passing of Carey Mulligan's character, there are a couple elements there that I'm not as big a fan of in terms of how it goes up about itself. But for the most part, yeah, this is absolutely breathtaking. How Bradley Cooper pulled this off from an acting perspective and from a filmmaking perspective should be commended, to say the least, because it is just a beautifully beautiful, well done film. This movie hit me at all the points emotionally that it needed to. So yeah, when I finished watching it, I was just spellbound. So Maestro, my number 2.
But I really liked Fair Play. It's nowhere near one of my favorites of the year.
Really? I loved it.
Like I can't disagree with anything you said, because it was just like, it was really engaging. It had something to say, and Phoebe Dynevor and Alden Ehrenreich were both really good. Like I don't think I loved it at all, but it was still like a really good movie, and I definitely understand why you put it there. But yeah, let's get into mine. Number 5, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yes.
Just one of Martin Scorsese's most disturbing and emotional movies. Here, the violence isn't criminal on criminal. Here, it's sort of this taking of power. It's like the stealing of these innocent people who righteously earned their oil money, and then it getting stolen. And honestly, like a story that not a lot of people had known about. At least I hadn't. And Lily Gladstone gives probably the best dramatic performance of the year. And I think, you talk about 3.5 hours. I think this one actually flies a lot better than The Irishman's runtime.
I agree.
But the cinematography, the production value of it all, it's a really strong movie and really resonated with me. Number 4 is probably the most personal film I saw this year, which is also one that we talked about, The Zone of Interest. This is a movie that kind of throws away or remakes everything that films do. But Jonathan Glazer sort of proves that this could have only been made as a film, if that makes sense. Like he, sort of through restraint, he shows such a different approach to Holocaust movies. And it really resonated with me, especially having, visited the sites where it happened, having, ancestors who perished in the Holocaust, and that having a lot of introspection. And especially now with a lot of stuff that's going on with the Jewish community and a lot of people turning their backs on that. I won't get, too into that, but it just definitely helped me frame a lot of the ignorance that we're seeing now in the world. And it's such a powerful movie that's haunted me ever since I saw it in September. Number three is Poor Things. Poor Things is, I know you said you liked it, but it didn't make your list. This is up in arms for the most visionary movie of the year. It's Yorgos Lanthimos taking everything that makes his style great and then moving it up to not even an 11, but like a 12. Because Emma Stone is brilliant. Mark Ruffalo is terrific. The production design, the cinematography, everything about it is great. But the energy, the humor, the audacity of everything makes for a really unique movie that sort of left me without words. But it just had me like in stitches laughing, but I was having so much fun. But I was riveted by the way it was executed. And then number 2 is a movie called Boy Nuke's World. No, I'm just kidding. It's called Oppenheimer. And I guess we can continue the discussion because I'm guessing that's your number 1.
Yes, you would be correct. That is my number 1. I will hope I wasn't trying to make that too obvious, but I'm sorry. But Nolan making a 3-hour long.
But I think you had told me that before once. So I assumed. But it's just, what can we say? It's like Nolan's. It's one of the best directed movies I've ever seen, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the minute that I heard, okay, Nolan's movie after the criminally underrated and still bashed to this day, Tenet. making a 3. Oh yeah. I'm a Tenet stan all day long. Making a 3-hour-long biopic about the creator of the atomic bomb that was going to star Cillian Murphy, the dude who's been lobbying for a lead role in one of his movies for damn near 20 years now. Yeah, there's no way this movie was never not going to be my number one. Also, the fact that this ended up kind of being the cinematic event of the year. I know the whole Barbenheimer thing happened, but like this was really the cinematic event of the year. This was one where it's like people came back to this for the love of cinema.
If you want to go to a theater, you have to see Oppenheimer.
Right, you have to see Oppenheimer, IMAX, 70 millimeter, and man, you felt every single minute of this movie, every single frame. I'm not going to say that it was one of those 3-hour-long movies that flew by, but man, just in terms of just being like the cinematic event of the year that I probably rewatched more than any new movie that I saw this year. I saw this 3 times in theaters. I remember I had to pee so badly every single time because I cannot hold I cannot hold myself for the life of me. And man, that third time when I was sitting there in the IMAX theater, man, I could not move. I probably
saw 3 times in IMAX.
I only saw it the one time in IMAX. The first 2 times I did not, but man, I probably did some serious damage to my bladder this year with the amount of times that I sat through that movie without having to move because, oh man, like this was such a treat. This was such a treat. And finally getting to see Cillian Murphy kill it as hard as he did, man, that ending where he's like, I believe we did. Man, that's going to sit with me for a long time, for a long,
yeah. I mean, if you're watching this and you haven't seen Oppenheimer, like, I don't know what you're doing. It's just, it's such a grand sort of like cinematic epic, this true story epic that's told long, such a long time with such amazing sets and settings and captures an era. It has a lot to say about like humans and politics and shit. I mean, you've seen Oppenheimer. I don't have to elaborate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what's your number one?
Past lives.
All right.
I'd be lying if I said this was. I definitely considered putting Oppenheimer at my number one at one point, but I'd be lying if Past Lives wasn't the movie that blew me away the most, that touched me, that had me thinking that it's not a wholesome movie, but it does sort of fill you up, even though it's also with a little bit of heartbreak. It's like Greta Lee, first of all, is terrific, and the movie talks definitely about being an immigrant, having these 2 different worlds, both in language and in culture, and just a movie about the people who make an impact in your life, who sort of come into your life and change it forever, whether or not they stay in your life or not. And again, Greta Lee, loved her in this so much. The way it was directed and written in such a meditative and beautiful and patient way. I don't know. Was this an honorable mention for you even?
Past Lives was a strong honorable mention for me. It was just a matter of, like I said, there were so many good movies that came out this year that I'm not going to say it got lost in the shuffle, but it was just one of those ones where I really, really enjoyed it when I saw it. I thought it was very heartfelt, very, very meaningful, but it was just a couple instances where I'm like, okay, like, I don't know. I felt like there were other instances where, like, I would have gone in other directions with the storytelling. But in terms of, like, being an examination of, like, romance and how people change over time, I thought it was very, very well done. And like I said, it is an honorable mention for me, for sure. It's just, like I said, I've got a lot of movies that I like this year.
It just, like, it spoke to me in a way. And, like there's this sort of, like, montage of them sort of Skyping. And the filmmaking in that was, like, 10 out of 10, when it comes to films about human connection and romance, this will always just stick the landing for me. And I mean, if this is the directorial debut, I mean, that's pretty amazing. But I'll shout out a couple honorable mentions. First of all, to piss you off, Barbie and Bottoms were 2 movies that I rewatched and I really enjoyed. The 2 absurdist A24 movies, Beau is Afraid and Dream Scenario. May December, which was on your list, John Wick 4, Spider-Verse, Guardians 3, American Fiction, Flora and Son, Maestro, And yeah, what are your honorable mentions?
Yeah, I got a few as well that I want to run through. So I have in this order Origin from Ava DuVernay, Zone of Interest, which we talked about,
That's a
Boy
good
and the
one.
Heron, Dumb Money, American Fiction, Beau is Afraid, Poor Things, Killers of the Flower Moon, Theater Camp, Tetris, Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, Eileen, Shortcomings, Anatomy of a Fall, Flora and Son, Past Lives. And I also wanted to throw in a shout out to Joyride, which is probably the comedy
Joyride
of
was
the year
funny.
for me. The comedy of the year for me. Other than Poor Things, some of the hardest laughs that I had this entire year.
Joyride was funny. A lot of those actors show up in Shortcomings, which I think you mentioned. Those are both really funny movies.
Yeah.
I'm just really happy we both shouted out Beau is Afraid at the end there.
Oh,
I love that movie so much.
That was in my top 10 for a long time. That almost made my top 10.
Me
Yeah,
too.
it was very, very
I
close.
love that movie so much.
Yeah.